everyone, this is Dr. Teralyn, and I have a special guest today. His name is Frank King, and he's actually the mental health comedian. And the reason I actually liked what I saw with you, Frank, was because I don't think that mental health has enough, it's always very dark.
Oh yeah.
And yes, and I'm not as dark about it as many people. So when I'm like, you're a mental health comedian, what is that? And
Yes.
yes, and let's start with that. So what is a mental health comedian? Introduce yourself. Let's get started.
Well, and Terry, I got to tell you, this is how I usually begin a keynote because, the elephant in the room when it's the mental health comedian is people are thinking, wait a minute, a comedian talking about depression and suicide, how does that work?
Yeah.
And I tell them I'm qualified for a number of reasons. One is that depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My
Oh
mother and
wow.
I found her. I was 4 years old.
Wow.
I'll spare you the gory details, but it's in my first TEDx talk called A Matter of Laugh or Death. I go through what happened with my mom and me and my great aunt in the discovering the suicide. And then in 2010, at the height of the recession, we had filed bankruptcy, lost everything. And at that point, I could tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. I had time, place, method. Didn't I? Yeah, tell the audience. Okay, spoiler alert. I didn't pull the trigger,
You didn't do it.
and it was just kind of a nervous laugh. And
Yeah, right.
then my next line is, a friend of mine saw me speak not long ago, and he'd never heard me say that before. And he came up afterwards, and he said this, and I quote, "Hey man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I go, "Hey man, could you try to sound a little less disappointed?"
Right.
Which gets a big laugh. And the thing about laughter in a serious scenario, there's a psychological principle at work. If you can tell somebody something serious and then give them some comic, they call it comic relief for a reason.
A
Give them a
reason.
little funny and not a joke, but just a funny personal story. And then it makes them more accepting of the next serious thing you're going to say. And so, and I believe that a comedian's job is and has been since the time of the court jester to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless. And I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those powerless in its grip. And I also believe where there's laughter, there's life. Where there's humor, there's hope. Nobody dies laughing. And so that's what I go through almost always in the opening of my keynote to make them comfortable with the idea of a comedian joking about. And I've had people say to me, "How can you joke about mental illness?" Well, here's the rule in comedy: you can make fun of any group to which you belong.
Okay, that's a good
Yeah,
rule. That's a good
yeah.
rule.
If you're
Yes.
black or African American, you make fun of African Americans. If you're Jewish, you make fun of Jews. Um, and I'm double diagnosed. I have what's called major depressive disorder, depression,
Mhm.
and chronic suicidal ideation, which is a little more rare. And somebody asked me one time, another speaker, "How'd you pick your topic?" Well, the topic picked me, really. Uh, the chronic suicidal ideation. Almost every time I speak, somebody comes up afterwards because I do a little Q&A for everybody. And then I say, "Look, if you got a question you want to ask and you don't want to ask it in front of everybody, you're like, I'm crazy. Can you help me?" I'll hang around till everybody's questions. So there's usually 1 to 6 people waiting. And oftentimes one of those people has chronic suicidal ideation. They had no idea it had a name. They think they're just some kind of freak.
Yep.
And the story I tell is, for me and my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And here's how small. A couple of years ago, my car broke down. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I could just kill myself. And that resonates with that one person in the back of the room, like, oh, what? Because
I
they
thought I
all,
was the only one that had those thoughts.
yeah. And
Yes.
a year ago, January, I had a woman come up to me after the keynote, and she was crying so hard she could not speak. And I said, "You've got chronic suicidal ideation." And she nodded. "And you didn't know it had a name?" "Nod." "You just thought you were a freak?" "Nod." I said, "Well, do you have a therapist?" She nods. I go, "Look, set an appointment. And when you get back home, tell your therapist everything you learned. And for God's sakes, tell him you Googled it. Don't tell him you learned it from a comedian." And she did laugh a little bit after. And then I said, and a week later, I got an email from her. And it said, "Frank, I believe I was at that conference simply to meet you. You have changed my life. And I can't say that about a lot of people. So that's my why." And by the way, Terry, I realized at some point that I'm like, oh my goodness, I am the character George Bailey in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what these people's lives would look like if I weren't there to speak and let them know they're not alone. My second thought was, oh, great. Now I can't die by suicide because I'd take all these people with me.
Oh, that's a big pressure.
Yeah. Well, it's actually become part of the protocol that I teach. If somebody's having thoughts, if you think somebody's having thoughts of suicide, you say to them, are you depressed? Yes. Thoughts of suicide? Yes. Do you have a plan? Yes. What is your plan? If it's detailed, they need to be on the suicide lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not particularly detailed, they don't really have time, place, method nailed down. I believe the next question should be, well, tell me, are you going to kill yourself? And if they say no, and this, I think, is the linchpin, then say this, okay, I believe you, but tell me why not. Make them give voice
Yeah.
to whatever, my kids, my dogs, my wife, I would never, So that's, I believe it's important. And if people could give voice to their thoughts of suicide, because more people have those thoughts than you might imagine, or probably not you might imagine, but the average person might imagine, without recrimination. Because if I said to my clinician, I was sitting in the train tracks today, looking at the train coming, thinking that would do it. She may be obligated by state law to bring me in front of a judge for an IDO, involuntary detention hearing, and I might get an all expenses paid 3-day vacation in a gated community with no belt or shoestrings.
Right.
But if we could give voice to those thoughts, because people always say after somebody dies by suicide, why didn't he say anything? I met a 67-year-old guy at an event. I was just doing stand-up comedy, and we're having dinner together, 10 top, and is comedy all you do? No, I speak. What do you speak? Speak on suicide prevention. And I go into the little, I have 2 illnesses, this and that. I'm on the way to the bathroom. A guy follows me. And as we're coming back out, he said, Frank, I got to tell you something. He goes, I'm 67 years old. I said, I believe I have what you have. I have chronic suicidal ideations. I have those thoughts all the time. And he said, and by the way, what I'm telling you right now, I've never even told my therapist, because I'm worried if I said this to him, that
She'd
he would
lock
have,
me up or he'd lock me up.
yeah, institutional, 5150 in California.
Yep.
So if we could give people permission to do that without people freaking out and locking them down, I think we could save lives, really. And
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, because, I am a therapist too, and this happens all the time in my office. People are afraid to answer the question truthfully because they think, am I going to be in the back seat of a cop car in about 10 minutes if I tell you this truthfully?
Yeah, exactly.
But all it takes, just like what you're saying, all it takes is a few more questions
to
really flesh out if there is actual intent and they're going to do it.
Yeah. Right? Are you gonna kill yourself?
Are you going to do it? I ask that question all the time. What keeps you from doing it then? Sometimes it's their cat.
Oh yeah.
Well, if I died, my cat would die. Like, who's going to take care of my cat? And I'm like, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the smallest thing, that keeps people from doing something worse,
Well, and our book, Guts, Grit, and the Grind, a men's mental mechanics manual, my co-author, Sarah Gare, it was her idea. She is a suicide prevention trainer, mostly first responders, mostly men. And she thought, I'd like to get a book that I could recommend to the fellas on men's mental health. So she goes to Barnes & Noble, nothing. BarnesandNoble.com, nothing. Amazon.com, nothing. So she thought, I think somebody needs to write a book. So what we did was we gathered, it's going to be 4 volumes. It started out as one book.
Oh, wow.
It became 800 pages.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, well, because it's not just stories, it's an anthology. But
Okay.
It's not just the men's stories. It's resources, it's clinical information, it's exercises. But we found these guys brave enough to tell their story, and each one has a different problem: drug addiction, alcohol addiction, depression, thoughts of suicide. And it's done this way. First 500 words is things are great. Second 500 words midstream, things are awful. Third 500 words downstream, here's how I'm coping, with the idea that men take advice from men more easily. A man might open it up, scan the index, find his problem, see how another guy is handling it. Because that's the way men are wired. My wife will tell you, she could give me a Nobel Prize winning idea. And I would like,
Right.
But if the mailman told me the same thing, I'm buying, plane tickets to go to Oslo to pick up the hardware.
Right.
So that was the idea. And what they did was they did some, not particularly scientific surveys, but they asked men, what are your top 5 problems? And they asked women, what do you think men's top 5 problems are? And the lists were similar, different order. Women put money at the top and men put something else at the top. I can't remember. And then they asked.
Sex, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. Although I'm 63, not such a big deal anymore. But anyway.
It should be.
Yeah, well, I'll
that's a different podcast episode.
Yeah, well, and my latest TED Talk, by the way,
oh,
is Mental Health and the Orgasm, Treat Your Depression Single-Handedly.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, it took me 15 tries to get a TEDx committee to buy that, but they did, and it was my first standing ovation at a TEDx.
Yes.
So
very good.
So when they asked women, so how do you think you can help a man? And they asked men, how would you like to be helped? And the lists were entirely different.
Yes.
And so the idea being that we think we'll probably sell more to women than to men because a woman's got a man in her life, brother.
She wants to fix him or learn about how to help him.
How to help, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made like an automobile owner's manual, on purpose.
Yeah.
So that that a guy would pick it up, and it's full of automobile metaphors. My favorite is, and I wrote this. Don't you wish men had a check engine light?
Yes.
Goes off. They take off to the mental mechanic, and the guy's like, "Bob, of course you're depressed. You're low on serotonin."
Right.
It would be really nice, but there's other things in there like you need a safe care plan. You need to prepare ahead. Like when you buy a car, you get a AAA membership because if you break down, there'll be somebody there to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And the car has safety equipment, airbags, seat belts, seat harness, shoulder harnesses. So you got to look first aid kit in the trunk and flares and a jack with tire slide.
Yeah.
And you need to maintain it. Paul Gwinnett, who created QPR Institute, Question, Persuade, Refer, which is what I teach, and my co-authors, Sally Spencer Thomas and Sarah Gare, are master trainers in QPR. The author, Paul Gwinnett, said if men took care of their cars as they take care of their brains, they need to buy a bus pass because they just bad.
Well, we look at these big things, cars, houses, like toys, whatever we have, as huge investments, right? And I must protect my monetary investment at all costs. However, we don't do the same thing with this investment. And the brain is really the only investment we need because if we don't have it, we're not going to have a car or house or anything else. We're not going to exist,
And, if your lifestyle, smoke, drink, drug,
all of it.
Don't eat well. I mean,
all of it.
I believe in a holistic approach.
Me too.
It's diet, exercise, good night's sleep, medication, meditation, and now after my TED Talk, masturbation. I mean, I love my iPhone, but it's my second favorite handheld device, which is the first line of my TED Talk, by the way.
So good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
So
talk about chemical release, right?
Yeah, endorphins and it lowers cortisol and DHEA. It pumps in DHEA. It's like a lymphatic massage.
All of it.
Yeah. So those are the points I made in my. My favorite thing was first of all the committee asked me didn't I have any PowerPoint slides.
Like you don't want to see those pictures.
Yeah, I said where would I get those? Where would I get those on Pornhub?
Exactly.
And then they said you need action items, and because I talk about how.
Do I have to demonstrate them? I don't.
Yeah.
Well, this could get weird. I don't know.
Yeah, because men who do it more often have a 20% lower incidence of prostate cancer than men who do it less frequently. And I stopped the talk at that point. I go, here's the deal, kids. At this point because I had to present the whole text to them. At this point, they said, well, Frank, you need action items. And I said, do you really think I need to encourage men to do this? It's kind of like barking at a dog. It's self-reinforcing. Trust me. And they said, well, you need an action item. I said, okay, fellas, here's my action item. You need to beat it like it owes you money.
Yes.
And they went nuts. Oh, my God.
That's so good.
But it is it is the orgasm specifically is very good for the body in terms of what you said. It lowers cortisol, it pumps in endorphins, DHEA. You know, it helps with insomnia, which can lead, you know, it can exacerbate depression. It's just a really, you know, it's and as I said, no deductible, no copay, and
Correct.
you do anywhere it's private. I said, you know, I mean, I did it in an airplane in the lavatory. I joined the Mile High Club. I was
By
by
yourself.
myself, so I got an individual membership, but um,
It was free 99.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I believe in a holistic approach, but some people just are into pharmacology.
Yep.
Well, and Sarah, who I'd love to have on your podcast, is she said she's going to do a podcast, not a TEDx or a talk on back in the day, apparently before some point in time, people in the mental health business treated the person's soul. They went digging after the problem, you know, to see what was the base, the heart of this issue. And she said somewhere along the line we began to default to pharmacology
And coping strategies.
Yes, living with it rather than treating the.
Up here. We were just up here.
Well, I said a good example of it is ADD, ADHD. Some of those symptoms are also the symptoms of being a victim of childhood trauma.
Sure.
But
Okay, I just need to say, like, I have jokingly said the DSM could be whittled down to a couple of pages and just called it trauma.
Yeah, and so the problem is, it's easier to diagnose a child with as ADHD or ADD, which are real and the symptoms are real, than to dig deep and try to figure out what's at the, you know, what's at the base, what's at the heart of this issue. So that's Sarah's, and that's going to be our next keynote, I think. And then Sally Spencer Thomas, Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas, my other co-author, way up the food chain in suicide prevention. She's in the board of the American Association of Suicidology. She lost her brother to suicide. And they're my co-authors. And they call me up because I'm also an auctioneer on occasion, charity auctions. One make a two bidder, no, two make a two bidder. And Sally called, would you auction at my foundation? She created a foundation in her brother's honor, Carson J. Spencer Foundation. And I went out and I did the auctioneering. And then when they came up with this book idea, Sally goes, you know what? I bet let's talk to Frank King, see if he can make it funny. So they called me up and they said, Frank, listen, two things. We'd like to make it funny. We need somebody to put the automobile metaphors in. And I said, ladies, let me get this straight. You two women are writing a book on men's mental health.
And you haven't asked a dude to help you yet?
Yeah. Don't you think you need, I don't know, a man?
Right.
Like a man. So I said to him, Terry, I said, look,
no, we just need you for the metaphors with the car.
I'm just arm candy. I got it.
Exactly.
I said to them, look, here's the deal. I'll put the metaphors in. I'll make it funny. But I want to be a co-author, and I want to voice the book for Audible. That's all I'm asking.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I voiced, there's little clips floating around now where you put out for promotional purposes. I voiced the forward. The website is guts, plural, grit, singular, gutsgritgrind.com. Guts, Grit, Grind. And if you go there and click on the forward, it's Paul Gwinnett, QPR. He wrote the forward masterfully. Why this book? Why now? Why these authors? And, you know, why now? 8 out of 10 suicides roughly in the U.S. are men.
They are. The other part I think about is, and I might have the statistic a little off, but this is what it is. 65% of, more than 65% of women show up in a doctor's office for medication than men. I may have said that incorrectly, but, and I always say that because there's so many male messages around mental health, you know, like big boys don't cry, just work harder, you know, all of that type of thing.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, just you know, get to it, right? Support your family, shush up, you know, all of that stuff. Women are more likely to go in and seek medication help than men, you know, or even therapeutic help than men. And it's interesting because, like, on my therapy couch, I do have a fair amount of guys that come in, but it's a very different therapeutic process. Very different. Men typically, from what I know, seek solutions, like, you know, very solution, I'm gonna say logical mind driven versus emotional brain driven. Right. What can I do? Help me. You know, like, give me the roadmap, give me the keys to the car, and let's get going, you know? But once you start drilling down and diving in a little bit more, things get a little bit deeper than that, you
Yeah,
know?
he used to have a joke in my act about men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah.
Well, what's the guy's name? Something Gray that wrote the book.
Oh, I can't remember his name. That was a while ago.
Yeah, well, he's married to Barbara DeAngelis. They're both relationship gurus. They're both been divorced a couple times. They're actually were married, now divorced. I said it's
So
like
they
a
really know what they're talking about, right?
well, yeah, it's like a shop teacher with three fingers. Yeah, he knows how it all
Yeah,
works. He's just not
exactly.
good at it. Um, and I said, men. Yeah, I read the book. Men are solution oriented,
Yep.
and I said, and it makes it sound like it's a bad thing. And I said, okay, ladies, here's an
No.
example. You got your car. It's snowy, it's icy, it's cold, and you're running late for work. And you turn the key and nothing happens. Battery's dead. When you come back in the house, do you want um, I feel your pain. I feel your pain.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, tell me
B,
how that feels. Like,
yeah,
you
or
know?
B, I'll get the jumper cables and get you on your way. I mean, which one do you want, the solution oriented or do you want the?
Right.
So yeah, it's
That is so true.
but again, because men and women are different, women don't know how to help men, and men don't know how to ask for help from. One of the reasons that construction is the number one at-risk occupation in the U.S. at this point is because it's rough and tough men generally who won't reach out for a solution because this is what is it male toxicity male something masculine toxic anyway toxic masculinity
Like you're
because
gonna be, you're weak.
yeah you're weak
You're not a man's man. Yeah,
yeah
you're weak.
so
Here,
that's,
have a drink.
yeah
Yeah.
well and men tie their egos to their jobs, and if you're a blue collar guy who's got a good middle class wage job and then AI and robotics come in and take your job away, you're 50. How are you ever going to get back to the same sort of stature, income? Yeah, so it's that's why we wrote the book, and I actually
It's
did. Go ahead.
it's a very timely book, because there's a lot more coming out on men needing to get mental health help more, more frequently, right? And a little bit of help is a good thing, you know. So I loved the title of the book, number one, and I
Thanks.
love that it's geared towards men. But yeah, I think you're right. It probably the men's women are going to be buying the book for them.
Yeah, for
So
them,
yeah,
so they can figure
for
out
them.
how to help them,
Exactly.
which is fine. It's fine.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well,
All
and it's again construction because it's rough and tough guys,
that's right.
and I often I keynote and do 30 minutes Q&A up to, and then I say, look, have we talked about this? If you got a problem you don't want to talk about in front of everybody, I'll just hang out. And usually it's one to half a dozen people hanging out,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's men. Hey, I was in the military. I was in the Marine Corps. The way you get through a problem like this is, you march. Yeah, you fast forward, and it took me a long. He said it took me a long time to actually go see somebody and get medication. But and Paul Gwinnett will tell you that that happens most often when there's an ultimatum involved. Look, I love you, but if you don't get help, whether
Yep,
it's alcohol or drugs or a mental health problem, I'm gone.
absolutely.
He said men don't wake up one morning and think, gosh, this way I'm feeling, this depression, do you think, I don't know, I think it's a mental illness kind of
Yeah,
thing?
do you think I should get
Stress.
help for that?
Yeah, exactly. Think I should get help with that?
No,
No.
no. It's
So,
probably after the 30th time that somebody has said, get help. And possibly after I've had a fair amount of women make the appointments,
yeah.
their husbands or loved ones, and they don't show up, you know, and or they come once. Well, my wife says I need to come to counseling, and then they won't reschedule, because they did it. They checked the box.
I came to counseling.
I came, I went, I saw, I did, and this is what she said, and it's over. It's a fascinating thing. But I did want to kind of circle back around to
Yeah.
the we'll call it pop-up suicidal thoughts, right? So
Yeah.
not the chronic suicidal thoughts, just the idea that I think, honestly, I think anyone and most people have probably had some type of passive suicidal ideation in their lifetime. And
Well,
it
I'm guessing
catches them
it's
off guard.
I'm guessing it's tied to a situational bankruptcy, divorce, fired, school failed.
Seasonal depression,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And really it's kind of a warning shot. I disclosed this just this last week that well, this has been like the hardest winter. I'm up in Wisconsin, so this has been a pretty difficult winter. I think as I age, the winters get harder emotionally for me. But anyway, so I was driving to work and I was at a stoplight, and what went through my head was, wonder what would happen if I crashed into a car right now, like this, right? And
That's very chronic suicidal ideation thinking.
right, it doesn't happen. That was like the first time probably since college that I can recall like
Yeah.
thinking like that. And so I actually disclosed it in a session, because sometimes I disclose things in session, and they were shocked. Like,
Really?
how, oh yeah, like you this happened to you? And I said the reason I disclosed it is because I wanted you to know it
Yeah.
happens to a lot of people,
Yeah.
that it's not just you. It doesn't make you weird, doesn't make you whatever. And it happens to a lot of people. It even happened to me,
Did you
what
disclose that to a patient?
I did.
Ooh, listen to you.
Hmm.
Yeah, because there's no real rule against this.
No.
It's just a tradition. Sarah's a big proponent, my other author.
Hmm.
The way she's going to end her career is she's going to get booked to do a keynote on mental health for mental health professionals.
Hmm.
She's going to stand up, and somewhere in there, she's going to disclose
Yeah.
that she is also a client, patient, whatever. And then she's going to say, anybody else out there in that situation? She goes, either they'll all sit on their hands and just watch me, flame out, or half the room will stand up.
Right.
And she said, before I do that, Frank, I'm going to get together maybe 11 other people so that a dozen of us clinicians are willing to come out. Because if we do it one at a time, though, the establishment will pick us off. Because yeah, she said, because I think it would be valuable. I mean, you don't want to take it, don't go overboard. She goes, you never want to go to a massage therapist after they get done and go, now let me do you.
No, I mean, disclosure is a gray area, right?
Yeah.
And you're only supposed to do it if it's pertinent to the client in front of you. It's not like
Oh yeah.
share any,
Tell everybody.
right. Well, I mean, I am now, apparently. I just told everybody, but
Oh God, yes.
exactly. However, when there's therapeutic value in it, and also the idea that therapists, myself, are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, nor do we not struggle sometimes with emotional things. Life is life.
Well, and I was at Lynchburg College, and I finished up my college suicide prevention keynote. And a young woman comes up to me. She goes, "Can I give you a hug?" And this is at the height of the Me Too movement. Everybody in the room's
Oh
got
yeah.
a cell phone camera. I can see the headline in my head: 62-year-old speaker gropes co-ed.
Right.
So I gave her a very brotherly, move my pelvis back out of the, hug.
Yep.
And I said to her, "Are you a hugger?" And she goes, "No, I don't hug." She goes, "Here's the deal, Frank. I've been in therapy for 2 years. My therapist is very good. She's very good. I mean, she's got the degree, she's got chops, but she has no context for what I'm going through." She goes, "I'm sitting there at the back of the room, 5 minutes in, listening to you. I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's inside my head."
Yes.
She goes, "Your 45 minutes didn't more for me than 2 years of therapy with somebody who doesn't understand."
Because she never shared the context.
Yeah.
She never relationally shared,
Yeah.
or anyways, according to that person. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing. But I think part of that too has to do with the topic. Like, if a therapist begins to share and disclose, and then you're talking about suicide, now I've got to call the cops. I mean, that's honestly what therapists believe. As soon as we start talking about suicide as a topic in the therapeutic session, like spending a whole hour on it, I've done that before.
Right.
Like, now all of a sudden I have to call the cops on you. You don't, but their therapists are scared, and there's this liability piece,
Liability
and
issue, yeah.
there's all this stuff. Like, it's supposed to be the safest place to share things, but it becomes a very unsafe situation,
Well, and
liability wise.
Paul Gwinnett, who created QPR, said that he ended up specializing in suicidal men.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he did was most of them were referrals from other therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists who did not want to treat them because they were terrified that if the man killed himself, the family would sue.
Yeah.
So, and he really enjoys working with men because he said, men, if they're willing to work at it, they go after it like, with a work ethic. Like,
Yeah.
they work to solve the problem, and they are grateful, and they are wired to pay it forward. So they help other men. That's like the book. These guys are coming out. They give their names. They've got these issues.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 in the book. I've got 2, not in the first book, but I got 2 in the series. Story about family support, and then a story about something, marriage and something else. One of them's anonymous, not because I want anonymity for myself, but it's about my first marriage, and I don't want my first wife being injured in any way.
Sure.
I was not particularly faithful, and I don't want people going, "How could you miss that?" to my ex-wife. So that's in there anonymously. But the other one is essentially about the same thing. My first wife didn't want me to be a comedian because they weren't her goals. That really wasn't what she didn't sign up for that. So my second wife, and my comedy was pretty good. Then I got separated and met my second wife, and she was very supportive as my girlfriend, very supportive of my comedy career. And somebody said to me at the comedy club, "Man, you got 50% funnier in a week." And that was the difference in no support, actually discouraging me,
Yeah.
and 100% support.
Yep.
The creative part of my brain goes, yes.
Right. Unleashed.
Yeah, unleashed.
Unleashed.
And she's been, and in my first wife's defense, she married an insurance guy. She got a comedian. It's a matrimonial bait and switch. My second wife, I was doing comedy when I met her. I told her I was going to be a professional comedian, and I invited her to come on the road. I said, "Look, I got 10 weeks booked. I'm leaving the day after Christmas, 1985. Do you want to come along for the ride?" And she said yes. And we were on the road for 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, 7 years.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and worked with, opened for Seinfeld, Dennis Miller, and Ellen DeGeneres, and Rosie, and Dana Carvey, and just, Adam Sandler, back when they were just comics. An amazing trip. But she was like, for her, kind of like joining the military. When you join the military, you know what you're getting into.
Right. It's when there's somebody switches.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
If you're marrying a guy in the military and you're about to become a military wife, you got an idea. Although a friend of mine speaks, it's called Behind the Badge. And she does a keynote on what she wished people had told her 20 years ago when she married a deputy sheriff, a guy in law enforcement. She said, "I was still marrying him knowing what I know now, but I wish somebody had told me these things about how the family, how the family deals with somebody who's in law enforcement."
Yeah.
Because when it's one world when they're working and they come home to an entirely different role.
Yep.
As father, grandfather, husband. So it's she said, "Yeah, it would be really nice if somebody told me all this." So anyway, yeah, it's that's my story.
That's your story. It's a good story. So before we sign off here, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you, and we'll also make sure it's in the show notes.
My website is thementalhealthcomedian.com. My business Facebook page is The Mental Health Comedian. My personal page, for reasons the listeners will not understand, is closed at this moment. It's just a whole cyber thing. I'm going socially silent. I like that. And I put my phone number up on the screen, so you can put my phone number in the show notes.
Okay.
What I do is I tell people, if you're suicidal, for goodness sakes, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Don't call you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're just having a really bad day and you're mentally ill, call a crazy person like me, because we're not going to judge. We're not going to should all over. You should do this and you should do that. Mm-hmm. We're just going to listen. And a guy called me not long ago on my cell, and he goes, "Oh my God, this is really your cell."
You actually answered.
I go, man, how cool would that be? How could I put up a number that wasn't mine? I said, do you want me to go into what my comedian brain just delivered to me? He goes, yeah, tell me what you thought. I said, well, not only is it not my number, the first thing you hear is, hold, please. And then you hear this, another one bites the dust, and
Oh
another one
God,
gone. Yeah.
that's
He goes,
terrible.
man, that's wicked. I go, yeah. That's why I give out my real number. And no, not many people call, but if they do, and sometimes it's not for them. Frank, my college roommate, I'm watching his Facebook post, and is this day? Take a look, would you? And see if what he's posting is really as dangerous as it sounds like. So I go and I take a look at and I call back, yes, as a matter of fact, you need to have his local police department go by and do a safety check, welfare check, just to make sure. I said, now let me warn you, if they go over there and they think he is suicidal, it's going to buy him that 3-day vacation.
Yeah.
He's going to be upset, but you know what?
They'll be
Alive and
alive.
upset, yeah, and unfriending me on Facebook is better than dead.
That is right. That is
So,
right. That is right. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
sure.
It was a good conversation. I would love to talk with you more. Congratulations on your book for men. So important. Yeah, so important. Such an underserved population. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Terry,
good. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will talk soon.